We are the Association for Child and Adolescent Mental Health, or ACAM for short.
Hello, welcome to the Papers podcast series for the Association for Child and Adolescent Mental Health, or ACAM for short. I'm Jo Carlo, a freelance journalist with a specialism in psychology. In this series, we speak to authors of published papers in one of ACAM's 3 journals. These are the Journal of Child Psychology and Psychiatry, commonly known as JCPP, the Child and Adolescent Mental Health, known as CAM, and JCPP Advances. Today I'm interviewing Andra Siibak, Professor of Media Studies at the Institute of Social Studies at the University of Tartu in Estonia, and Kristjan Kikerpill, Lecturer in Information Law and Digital Sociology of the same institution. Kristjan and Andra co-authored the paper, Schools Engaged in Doom Monitoring Students' Online Interactions and Content Creation, an analysis of dominant media discourses, recently published in CAM. If you're a fan of our Papers podcast series, please subscribe on your preferred streaming platform. Let us know how we did with a rating or review, and do share with friends and colleagues. Kristjan and Andra, thanks for joining me. Can you start with an introduction about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, hi, and thank you for having us. So, I work at the University of Tartu as a professor of media studies, but my specific area of interest for research is currently related to datafication, in particular datafication of childhood, and during the more recent years also datafication of education. So this is also concretely related to the paper that was published in that special issue.
Thank you. And Kristjan?
So I am a lecturer in information law and digital sociology. That's a double-edged sword, but for my everyday teaching assignments, I teach freedom of expression and privacy law to upcoming journalists and communication students. The other side of my research activities, often carried out together with Andra, are multifaceted because I study online scams, deception, but now also datafication of education, in particular issues with surveillance and the use of artificial intelligence in carrying out surveillance.
Very interesting areas. In your paper, you say thousands of schools have hired companies to provide them with student activity monitoring software. Can you describe the types of activities that get monitored? And I'm wondering if this is something that just happens in the United States, or is this something that happens everywhere?
We really see the uptake of such kind of technologies, and this particularly started during the COVID pandemic, obviously, but there has been a growing public concern about the safety and security of students and schools. Therefore, in particular in the US, but also in other countries around the world, we see how various schools and school districts started to hire private companies to monitor students' online interactions, especially the content they create, especially also in the social media interactions. And basically, of course, it slightly differs in between the different vendors, what kind of affordances this software have. But in the majority of cases, such software is used for monitoring students' online searches, the content of the emails or some other documents, also the social media interactions. And oftentimes also the software is used on school-issued devices. This happens especially in some school districts within the US, but in some occasions also in the privately owned devices of the students. And also some vendors provide schools with a range of monitoring and control functionalities, like blocking inappropriate material or tracking logins to school-related applications, but also viewing students' screens in real time, or closing some web browser tabs, or even taking direct control of their input functionality.
We're going to look in more details in your paper, but before we do, I'm wondering, what are your personal views about this form of monitoring of student online activity?
I can give you the exclusive on how the phrase doom monitoring came about. So when we started reading about these news articles, I didn't know there were so many and how far-reaching this technology is. an image appeared in my mind of, if you can imagine, a police officer or a member of the SWAT team in full tactical gear standing in the hallway of a primary school telling first graders not to run so fast. So what this really represents is the disparity of the tools that we bring to bear to try and solve certain problems, or at least give off the impression of solving these problems. And that should raise numerous questions about the appropriate balances, checks and balances, really, is whether or not this is really necessary, how effective it is, and what are the consequences, what is the collateral damage of trying to use these types of, let's say, quote unquote solutions.
Andra, what about you? What are your personal views?
Yeah, well, I have always, from my academic career, studied children and the use of online technologies, which have made me especially concerned about the impacts that technologies can have on young people on the one hand, but also on the other hand, I'm also concerned about potential moral panic. But as I have been studying also various topics related to privacy, I'm also concerned about students' rights and young people's rights. And in particular, their right to privacy, but also a right to free expression that I currently see that these kind of technologies start to have a concerning impact on. So yeah, personally, I'm also more skeptical and concerned.
Okay, well, let's look at the research. Let's turn to your paper. This was schools engaged in doom monitoring students' online interactions and content creation, an analysis of dominant media discourses, recently published in the CAMH. Can you give us a brief overview of the paper to set the scene?
We were engaged in numerous similar topics, but this one emerged specifically the use of these monitoring technologies, and so we decided to look further into it. What the picture that emerged is that while we do have news stories about the issue and how it's playing out in different societies, there was not too much research available on the same sort of level that you would expect, because something that interests you as a topic, would hope there is lots of previous research that can help you find your way and find the niche that needs more work. But here it was more of an open field for us. So we took the materials that we had and we could find, and so we tried to then contribute in our own way through studying media texts and taking a critical approach to media texts. So I would say that's sort of the brief overview of the paper structurally. And what we found out was that there are certain ways of speaking about these topics. And I would say, like, for me, let's say the most surprising thing was just how little students, children, and youth were themselves involved in this discussion, because they were mostly silent, and we mostly these again, quote unquote, expert adults discussing the topics. And so that was really interesting for me, because off topic, I could say that if something similar were to, let's say, be imposed on us as employees, I don't think we would sort of take it lying down, saying that this is completely normal. But it seems that when children and youth are concerned, and there's this question of, are we engaging this topic in a manner that could be described as a subject type of interaction, where we fully acknowledge children's rights in the different approaches that we take? Or do we have subject-object type interaction, where is we, the adults or the expert adults, are deciding what's best for the children, and we find that, well, why would we need to include them? We know best.
I'm going to dig in more into the detail a bit later. I just want to take a step back. Can you tell us a little about the methodology used?
So we opted to use critical discursive psychology, and the approach takes sort of as its basis this understanding that people are both the products and producers of discourse. So we are impacted by the way something is thought of and discussed, and we can therefore reproduce this existing discourse. but we can also introduce changes and shifts which become part of the discourse over time. So we have different positions, subject positions available in discourse. So whether we agree with the topic or the way it is discussed, or whether we resist it. And so studying language on this level and this micro level, and then connecting it to these wider discourses, social cultural discourses, that was just a very interesting way of approaching task that we had ahead of ourselves. And so we have these direct quotes in the news articles, and then connecting these to the wider discourse, how these topics are discussed, whether it's techno-optimism all the way, someone is promoting a technology, whether it is really, really critical on the other hand, and then finding how people actually use these so-called interpretive repertoires, which are relatively coherent ways of talking about something with a more limited terminology in use when addressing specific topics. And so it was very interesting for us to see how these specific quotes in news articles created these interpretive repertoires, and how in turn these repertoires would feature in wider discourses.
And let's return to the findings. What were the key findings that you'd like to share?
Actually, I would like to sort of go over the interpretive repertoires that emerged from our analysis. And so the first one, I guess it already came up. It was the silent students, expert adults, right? So the most qualified respondents when it comes to students' personal experiences with and opinions on constant digital surveillance. And this is something certainly that needs further research in the future, because it cannot just remain at sort of a fact, or like declaring the fact that children's voices seem to be neglected, but we need to find out more down the line. And so the second interpretive repertoire said it was a solution in search of a problem, which is directly from a quote in one of the news articles. It emerged through our analysis because there are lots of these options available in terms of technology, and they're trying to have the solution, so-called. Now they're trying to find the problem to which it is best to attach this solution. So what emerged from our analysis, also this type of opportunism involved and the type of fear-mongering involved, as certain quotes also brought out the fact that whenever, for example, there is a school shooting, there's then this influx of marketing type emails suggesting that these companies can keep your students safe, they can sort of prevent these horrible events from happening. And when things get really bad, then the decisions can also be sort of more easily maybe achieved. Then the critics sort of counteract this by saying that whenever these horrible events happen, we cannot simply set aside all the rights that everyone have and focus on this solely and use whatever means necessary to sort of prevent the next bad thing. So we have to take a more balanced approach and find out what could be a more effective solution to this actually deep-seated social problems that exist. Then the third, which is interpretive repertoire, the normalization of surveillance for a good cause, it's mostly a techno-optimistic sort of way of speaking about things where everything can be solved through surveillance. If you have enough information, then you can sort of weed out everything that is bad, right? Because you have this near perfect picture of what is going on, and you wouldn't have that if you weren't surveilling people, around the clock. And so by, let's say, marketing or supporting this as the positive solution to these issues would actually take us down the line where this becomes normal.
I want to pick up on something you mentioned there, which is the inaccuracy of the technology. In the paper, you describe the applied doom monitoring technologies as woefully inaccurate and poised for an excess of false positives. I think there's one example given where kids discussing shooting basketballs is taken as meaning shooting. I'm just wondering, can you give some other examples of how the technology fails and also what the implications are for the young people being monitored.
Yeah, I can just add that basically from the media reporting, we see various instances where this technology has failed students or really flagged some content that shouldn't be flagged, and which has caused various kinds of problems to the students. Example related to the basketball team and really shooting. Also, let's say some tweets about a movie shooter were flagged as potential threats, or when someone mentions in social media that their credit score is shooting up, then this is also something that was flagged. Schools started alerting parents that there will be a lockdown drill that they are exercising during the morning break. Also, what was interesting is that in some occasions also the technology flags some possible profanity and hate speech. In several occasions, for instance, it was noted that the word gay was considered to be possible profanity or part of the hate speech. Or also some anecdotal evidence when a student was writing a biology project and used the word shit, or when the student was writing an essay about Odysseus and used the word bastard in it, and then it got flagged as well. Basically, what we found out, and from what other research has also indicated, that was based on one specific school district's analysis of their reports that they have had from the technology. Then they got 1,400 reports, and basically most of them were later confirmed to be just some students joking around, or actually nothing serious. Really, the multimodality of these interactions and the lack of context, or basically no context is taken into account by these technologies, is the fact that leads to these very strange reactions upon various words.
I'm wondering about the impact that has on young people, and I also want to know, in particular, if this is something that came up, the impact of this type of monitoring on marginalised young people, such as students of colour and those from the LGBTQ+ community.
In particular, what could be highlighted is the fact that in the majority of cases, still in the US, for instance, this software is used in school-issued device, but the student groups who are provided help by the school to use the device are usually marginalized, come from low-income backgrounds, and they simply cannot afford this technology. Additional worries related to LGBTQ youth. For instance, the governor of Texas called up to investigate the families of kids who were seeking gender affirmation. You are being surveilled and all your online interactions are being surveilled. Then this might lead to potential harm for these more marginalized youth. Another group that was highlighted to be more affected were students with disabilities whose online interactions might be misinterpreted.
And yet, despite what you've said, I note from the paper that the majority of teachers and parents questioned believe that such technologies keep students safe, whereas students take a very different view. Can you elaborate on this?
Well, I think it's necessarily take on a very strikingly different view. That this is also something that we see from various representative surveys that were provided last year on the topic. But what we see is really from the media reports, the students' voices are almost non-existent, and their experiences and their views are not really asked about or reported in the media. But when they are reported, then what do the students usually voice is that if those technologies work perfectly as they are promised to work, they wouldn't have anything against such kind of technology use. Then they think that it could be a good way of helping to keep themselves or their peers safe. But the problem that these technologies do not really work as they are promised. The problem of these false positives and whatnot has made them also very skeptical about this technology. Therefore, they are much more hesitant and much less enthusiastic about those in comparison to adults.
Given your findings, is there any place in your view for the use of this type of technology? I mean, are there examples where it has protected young people from risk of harm?
From the media reports that we analyzed, we really were not able to see many evidence what this technology actually doing it's supposed to do. So rather we saw again references to anecdotal evidence and still rather evidence that is telling otherwise, that it's not working, it's really helping to make schools safer and more secure for the students. And again, I think the most recent, probably also most traumatic incidents where we saw that this technology is actually failing was in the context of Uvalda school shooting that happened in May 2022, which was one of the deadliest massacres of in the US elementary schools. And that specific school district was using such technologies, but again, the technology failed to pick up this very concerning post by the teenage gunman, and later quite a big media debate also happened, like how can this be? We have kind of paid for this technology to keep our students safe and secure, and now we have this horrible event happening to our students.
How might this kind of technology be used, if at all, or improved then to better support young people?
Well, my personal opinion would be that perhaps we should start to invest more money actually into people themselves, and also additional systems that help students in need, because we also reviewed quite a bit of literature which actually revealed that school districts still lack various systems where peers could report about concerning or threatening student behavior, like some tip lines, some helplines, or some text messaging systems. And also there is a considerable lack of knowledgeable staff who could properly assess students who might be exhibiting such kind of concerning traits. So definitely if we invest more money into educating the staff, also fellow students, and providing additional kinds of systems that could help, then we will not be relying solely on just this one software and hope that it will be the silver bullet that will save us all.
Thank you. Are you planning some follow-up research, or is there anything else in the pipeline that you'd like to share with us?
Well, from my side, what we are actually currently working on is yet another context where AI is being used very enthusiastically currently, and which has also quite a bit of impact on the educational sector. And this is obviously the case of ChatGPT. So this is currently the topic we are eagerly trying to wrap up our first analysis.
No, that will be interesting. Kristjan, anything else you want to add in terms of future research?
We're keeping our eyes on these issues of artificial intelligence, and I would say more broadly, this over-reliance on technology as a solution, as a potential solution for social issues that have sort of persisted in society for a long time. And people have taken these problems on in various ways and through the decades, but haven't really come up with a good solution. And so now with the advances in artificial intelligence and technologies that are assisted by different applications using AI are definitely sort of, I would say, marketed or at least discussed as this magical next step that would solve a lot of these problems. But I feel like cutting corners here, maybe twisting the narrative a bit in terms of how useful technology is or could be for various reasons, right? Technology vendors might have, especially when marketing their own technology. But I would say no technology in and of itself is the solution. A lot of it, when used properly, can be of help. So I actually very much agree with what little there was from students in our paper that we could report. My personal sort of understanding and the interpretation of it was that the students were the most reasonable in this discussion. They didn't have very, say, a radical opposition or a radical support for this technology. They were very clear about really, if it works as it is sort of advertised to work, and if it is precise, and if it is used when necessary, it would be of help. If it's a random sort of sifting through masses of information to find maybe something that is wrong, and that maybe after the fact could turn out to be just a joke, this is a waste of resources. It becomes this question of, Andra already mentioned, also investing in people more so than chasing this next technological dream, or even a pipe dream, right? And so taking a more wholesome and a critical approach to these issues.
Thank you. And finally, a question for each of you. What is your take-home message for our listeners?
I would say stay critical. Try to take into account the different sort of loyalties that various agents have when looking at how these discussions and the discourse gets together through these, independent sort of small quotes of text, and then try to understand where these people are coming from. What are they trying to achieve when they say things the way that they say it? And then try and see the intent behind it, because it can reveal a lot about what is sort of in the process of being sort of arrived at or achieved when speaking about these topics. See where the concerns lie, and then see who benefits from the way we speak about these things. So if we take an overly techno-optimistic approach, obviously this is very good for the technology vendors. If we take a type of Luddite approach, right? So complete technology sort of disregard, then we would also probably lose something in the progress. So I would say just take a balanced approach, not only to the activities, but also the accompanies these activities.
Thank you. And Andra?
Yeah, as we both represent so-called critical data school of food, then I totally agree what Kristjan has just said. And I would just add that basically I'm quite sure that we are unable to solve all kinds of social problems that technology vendors are currently advertising that they are able to solve just by creating yet another new device or yet another new app. Definitely we need to invest much more into it.
Thank you both so much. Plenty of food for thought there. For more details on Kristjan Kikerpill and Professor Andra Siibak, please visit the ACAM website, www.acam.org, and Twitter @ACAM. ACAM is spelled ACAMH. And don't forget to follow us on your preferred streaming platform. Let us know if you enjoy the podcast with a rating or review, and do share with friends and colleagues.